Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another installment of our Green Room Chats. Kim Noltemy is here at the Meyerson, and we have some very special guests this week. So, Kim, you want to get started?
Hi, everyone. I'm at the Meyerson. That's the beautiful background you see behind me. And I'm thrilled to be talking today with Chris and Sasha Adkins, two important members of our orchestra who you will get to know when you watch today's Green Room Chats. So Chris and Sasha, tell me how you've been doing in quarantine, what you've been up to, where you are. Give me the whole scoop on what's been going on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're fine. For Mother's Day, my husband taped up all the windows so that I couldn't see outside on our balcony, which is spectacular. And he and the children outfitted a little oasis for me. I wish you could see it, but somehow the weather has been really incredible because we're not in Colorado and we've only had 1 or 2, 3 really hot days. So I've been out there reading a lot. We have too many cats, so all the bird feeders are a no-go. There are no birds, they're too smart. But I have flowers and I have wind and I have peace, and we're very, very much okay. You?
Me? I've just been reading a lot.
That's great. Well, what have you been reading? Tell us.
Oh, nothing I'm too proud of too proud of admitting. Mystery stories and investment manuals and stuff like that.
I think I have 4 books going, but mainly the huge discovery has been Hermann Hesse. I've been reading, all of his books. I started out with Glass Bead Game. Reading a lot, actually, which it used to be a real passion of mine when I was little. But then when I decided to be a musician, that kind of had to go away for years and years. Also watching my children not reading. That's been what we've been doing. So we're considering paying them. So far I have offered $500 to my oldest to read Pride and Prejudice. So since she's an Adkins, she asked, can I just have the money?
I'll read it. Can I get
You read
$500?
it?
Can I get $500?
It's my money.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, so you have a large family and you're all there together and the kids are, homeschooling and all that. So it must be a bit hectic. Although the school year has recently come to a close or is about to come to a close depending on the school. So are you figuring out ways for everyone to have their space? You have your oasis on the porch, I understand, but what about everybody else?
It's interesting you mentioned homeschooling because one of the weird things truly about Chris and me is that we actually homeschooled the 5 youngest for about 10 years. And so we've heard a lot of people pulling hair out, which is how this actually happened to Chris. 12 years of homeschooling, but really it was a tremendously happy time for us because we are both musicians in the orchestra and because 3 nights and a Sunday afternoon are taken up with concerts and both parents gone. Sort of did the math when we only had the 2 girls, and it's a lot of time for parents to be gone. So it's something that we did, and because we're musicians, we really learned how to crystallize just what's necessary. They needed to read and compute and express themselves. And that was a wonderful time, but as they started to get into teenage years, it became untenable. So we put them in school, and so now the 2 youngest girls are at home, and so really we learned at that point, do what you're told. This is the assignment, and so it hasn't been anything beyond what we're used to. I think really once you're a musician, I don't know really what would be hard. I don't know. I mean, it's so difficult what we did when we were little.
But even though the school year is over, math continues. Math never stops. So Algebra 2 all summer long.
Well, that sounds incredibly exciting. Speaking of teaching, do you both have students that you're doing online lessons with, or how does that all work?
Got a few online students, but like the SNU teaching is over and done with, so it's just a few private students right now.
I don't have too many students, and of course some of them dropped out. But it's interesting because since we do teach by Zoom, I have been watching him teach, and he has been watching or overhearing me teach. So what has come out of that was, Sasha, you sound a little impatient. And I am kind of amazed at the things that Chris is, the really sophisticated things that he explains to middle schoolers. And I'm kind of...
They understand.
They do.
You can talk to a middle schooler on a very deep level if they're primed.
So that has been very interesting. I've never been really in on Chris's lessons, and this is very different from doing audition prep, which we also do a lot, and talking to professionals or high level students. And really the way he talks to children, it's very fun, because he talks that way to my children too, but with very different results.
Just to be clear, my children is actually our children.
That's what I was thinking.
But they don't listen to either one of us. And these other children on Zoom, you know, he's God. They do everything he says. Somebody needs to talk to.
It's a good feeling.
It's unjust. I understand. All right, so let's go back in time and talk about when you each won your auditions. You know, what was it like in the orchestra when you first arrived, and sort of any sort of words of wisdom you have about all of that? I'd love to hear it.
Oh, it was a long time ago, 1987, but it was an amazing period, because coming back to Dallas was homecoming for me. I grew up in Denton. I'm a Texas boy from generations back, born in Brownwood, Texas. And so the Dallas Symphony was always my hometown orchestra. And it was the one that I grew up with. It was the one that I came to see. It was the one whose players I idolized. And when I came back, not just to join the orchestra, to be principal cellist, it was a dream come true. Not just for the reasons that I grew up here, but also for one deeper reason, which is my teacher, Lev Aronson, was principal cellist of this orchestra for many years, and he was one of the most amazing men I've ever met. He changed not just my life, but the lives of many young men and women in this area. He was an amazing cello teacher. Let me just tell you who some of his students were. Lynn Harrell, Ralph Kirschbaum, John Sharp, principal of Chicago Symphony, Mitch Maxwell, principal of the Dallas Opera, on and on, the list goes on. That in what was much more of a provincial town back in the 1960s than it is today, he had a cello studio that was the envy of any of the big New York teachers. And how did he do it? He was amazing. He was an amazing man. He came to this country after the war. He actually survived the concentration camps. And the way he survived was really amazing. And what he did, he knew that he can't survive for years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever it was going to take for the war to be over. You can't take a task that large. You would just curl up in depression and die. And so many people did. He knew to get to the end, he had to survive the next 20 minutes. And so as he would be put to labor, he would start to sing inside as he was performing the task or the work that he'd been set. He would sing inside. He would go all the way through the Saint-Saëns cello concerto. And when he finished, he knew he'd lived for 18 more minutes. And then he would start in with Schumann and always Bach. And that's the way he measured his time towards the goal of redemption that lay somewhere in his future. He didn't know when. But after surviving that, he came to this country, and you can imagine the wealth of wisdom that had been built up in this man's heart. And he shared that with me, just, young snot-nosed kid, right? And it was life-changing, just absolutely life-changing. So when I came back to Dallas, remember, he'd been principal cellist here. So I was taking his chair and I was closing this circle, and he was still alive for a year and a half after I returned. So he got to see that circle be closed, and it meant as much to him as it did to me that his student had now taken what, in spite of intervening principal cellist, what was always in my mind and probably a lot of other people's mind, Lev's chair. And now it was mine, and it was just an amazing, amazing thing.
That is an amazing story. And how about you, Sasha? You have your own amazing story as well.
I do. I joined the orchestra a year after Chris did, and Chris was on my committee.
And that's the last I saw of my heart.
How cute.
Well, there is actually a funny story that goes with that, because he was on my committee, and you know my husband very well, Kim. He's a card-carrying legalist. So for 30 years...
She means that well.
I have asked him for 30 years, what was the discussion on my committee meeting? What did people say about me? What did Maestro Mata say about me? Because when I joined, it was Maestro Mata. And Chris said, you know better, the discussions of the audition committee
are confidential. For 30 years. 30
years. After we had 6 children, it was still not for me to know what was said about me. But that was a wonderful time because I was very young. Of course, I think Lydia beat me to it. I think she was 22, but I was 23 when I won this job. And it was just a tremendous, tremendous time because, at the opening concert of the Meyerson, I shook hands with Van Cliburn, and he made a big impression. Maestro Mata made a really big impression. Just the intensity of
Sylvia McNair made a very big impression
on Chris, as gorgeous sopranos tend to. So yes, that was kind of a fun thing. Anyway, that's my story. We were married, Kim, just across from where you're sitting now. We were married on the steps up to the hall. 1994.
Wow.
Lucky you got that date right. 1994.
Yep.
So Sasha, were you educated in the United States or elsewhere? I don't think people know your background.
If I could brag on her just a little bit, when she came to this country at the age of 16, she did not speak a word of English. And listen to her now.
I grew up in Ukraine. The education I received as a violinist there is very similar, I think, to what Americans know about the ballet schools, the Russian ballet schools. The violin school is very much like that. It's very academic. It's very rigorous. It's a lot of theory, a lot of I had 2 lessons per week, and I was in a music school every day for some sort of training. So by the time I got to America, I was 16. Really, a lot of doors opened for me because of that training. But the biggest fortuitous event was that we landed in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was able to see the Cleveland Orchestra concerts every week for free And I just had that incredible vision that I would do that one day, that I would play in an orchestra. I studied with, the dearest man on earth in Indiana University. I studied with Joseph Gingold. We had a lot of discussions about what the orchestra of his age was like. He played for Toscanini. And the interesting thing is that he said, we never needed the excellence that you require to get into the orchestra now. Those were his words. I'd play for him to prepare for auditions, and he would just say, well, darling, you were born to play the violin. And I would say, how does that help me? So
Give me a lesson.
No, he just said, do it just like that. So anyway, I have a history of, just such richness of being trained there, and the love and the love for the excellence, also the love for music. I had a very rich childhood. Having that and having dance and having literature, all of that was just the air that I breathed there. So I know a lot of people hear Soviet Union, but that's not what my life was really like. And but speaking of that, saying to my children the Soviet Union is gone makes no impression. They don't understand that, but yes, I do appreciate that I'm here in America in a great orchestra, and those people are no longer alive who trained me, but I think they would be amazed how far I've come.
Well, we're lucky to have two amazing players like the both of you, and obviously we have a wonderful orchestra in general, but it's fun. The couples are fun too. So I love this sort of, back and forth between the two of you in this conversation. What are you looking forward to this upcoming season? I know we're all nervous because we're not 100% sure that we're going to be able to perform the way we thought we would, but let's just pretend we will. And that maybe the only limitations will be the number of people who can watch us. What are you looking forward to? What are you dying to play? Tell me about that.
I haven't really looked over the repertoire, so I'm not going to give you a specific answer there. But I'll tell you what I am really looking forward to is broadening and deepening the relationship with Luis. Because just the few exposures that we as an orchestra have had to him, he hasn't been here many weeks yet, but the weeks that he has been here have been spectacular. And he's made an only a very profound musician and a deep thinker, but as a wonderful gentleman. And I think the future for this orchestra is looking very, very bright.
I'm not nervous. I'm married to him. He's rubbing off on me.
I'm the optimist.
He's the eternal optimist. We have absolute trust in, you, Kim, we have absolute trust that there are people that value what we do, and what happens in a live performance is nothing like what a recorded performance is. And so I'm looking forward to being with the people. These are people that I have known for 33 years. I love going to work with Chris. It's an unusual thing, I understand, but it's a very different side of our relationship, because at work, he's a big dog. I'm very proud of him. I love to see him
Woof.
lead his section. I love how serious he is. Also, he does not sing at work at all. He plays his cello. He sings at home relentlessly, and that has been a problem. But we are not nervous. I'm not nervous. I look forward to being there. I mean, honestly, we go to work in a palace. Look at where you are, and it's surely a lot of people go to work, and it's meaningful jobs, but it doesn't look like the Meyerson. It doesn't sound like the Meyerson, and really the group of people that we have are unusual, because they bring their best. They bring their best to work, and it's build each other up a bit.
Well, I agree with you. We're so fortunate to have this incredible building, the aesthetic of it, and then there's the auditorium. The acoustics are phenomenal. And then, you know, Fabio Luisi, it's just, like you, I'm dying to have him back with the orchestra, and it's just such a warm and positive experience for all of us, including on the administrative side. And I want to hear more about the singing at home, though. What do you sing at home, Chris?
Oh, good grief. He sings.
I'll let her answer that.
It's horrible. It's Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, as in the musical?
Indeed.
Musicals, 1970s rock and pop. I mean, it's not classical, I'm afraid. Sorry.
No, it's a very odd thing about Chris. He's truly diversified. I am not. I'm only a strictly classical musician.
And even then, rather selective.
And even, yes, the fun thing about having some time is that I have not played piano for 35 years. And I've just been playing a little bit, and it's such a delight, because when I play violin, I feel very lonely. There's not, no orchestra around me. But, Chris is, well, I guess he's an American is what he is. He grew up with these things. I didn't. Beatles are a strain for me. Oklahoma kind of is a test of my patience.
Fleetwood Mac. Cream. There's a big one.
Yes, but when he works and studies, that his playlist is not my world.
Well, that's kind of fun, though, that it's, some of the contrasts make it more interesting, right?
We'll say so.
Theory. So tell me about your favorite memories, playing in the orchestra or at the Meyerson. Just one or two, like what do you think about and say, wow, I'm so proud or happy I was here that day we did X or we played X?
There are a few concerts that stand out. I remember a Brahms Requiem with Klaus-Peter Flohr. You get done with certain concerts and you think, that was lovely, that was beautiful, that was whatever. But then there's a few concerts that you get done with, and it was not only beautiful, you say that was an important thing to have done. And that was one. Of course, there's a lot of fun memories too, playing with Lytton at the proms, Royal Albert Hall. And the audience was just so raucous and just a great time. I mean, they were yelling at us about the Dallas show from the mosh pit down there, and when we actually played Dallas for an encore, the place went bonkers. The theme from the Dallas show, we played that for an encore, and I'm surprised that the lid did not just pop off the hall, because the response was so incredible. That was amazing. Another fun experience was playing with a quartet from the Dallas Symphony in center court for the Mavericks in the playoffs. So we played the national anthem at the Mavericks game, and they lost that night, so they didn't ask us back.
Well, I don't want to be too romantic, but my audition week with the DSO is when I actually saw him, and he had a solo in the Schumann Symphony. And it was a beautiful thing. I'd never quite either listened to or seen anyone that handsome sound that good.
That was a while ago.
It was a bit ago. Of course, I have had lots of memorable moments in the Meyerson, but some of the funny ones were that I had to go out in the audience for some reason, and I was expecting again I think maybe the 5th or 6th time, and this poor audience member just could not help herself and said, "Are you pregnant again?" So, so yes, I have been on that stage, and I guess she just had an unguarded moment. I also have the odd spot where I sit, where I actually get to watch the pianists, which is such a treat. Another funny moment was, Andrew Litton and Fima Bronfman playing duets on the same piano bench. So in case you're wondering, yes, several people were praying for that piano bench at that point.
That was what Andrew called out when he sat down for the encore, that Fima, who is a large man, was already seated, and Andrew, who is also a large man, came over and sat down so they could play piano 4 hands. And he just brought the house down when he called out to the whole room, "Pray for the bench!"
I did. Well, that moment with Van Cliburn was spectacular. Maybe people don't remember, but people say they're warm personalities. And then there was Van Cliburn, just a giant, warm person. Thought out the Soviet Union, right? There were concerts on tour with Maestro van Zweden where we were in his home hall. And he's a very guarded man, but it was interesting to see for just a split second the guard down, and just to see that he was pleased with us, that we did well, that he was proud, because he brought us to Concertgebouw, and of course everyone was checking out, well, how is he doing with, what is it, Dallas? Where's that? And it was a treat to have that connection, because though I consider myself a European, but they didn't know that about Dallas Orchestra. They don't know really how many people or who's in there. They just really do think the show Dallas when they heard us, but we sounded so glorious. It was very proud moment then. Andrew Litton playing the Ravel, is a G concerto for piano.
Yes.
Not
the left-hand concerto, the G major.
It was odd because, again, it was just to see a moment of him not being in charge, just letting the music take over. That was a real high point in my life. A real low point was the concert, memorial concert for Maestro Mata, which was 2 weeks after Chris and I got married, and I did not play. I just sat on stage and cried, which I couldn't play. Too incredible to imagine the loss. And Salome was incredibly hard.
Kim, we need to get the block of Pearl Street in front of the hall, or Flora Street, renamed Eduardo Mata Way. Seriously.
That's an interesting idea. We should, we had that concert to mark, pay tribute on the anniversary of his death earlier, and we had to postpone it because it was just before coronavirus kind of really took over, and we didn't want to have an audience that wasn't full and have people no-show and all that. So we do need to reschedule that, and we're trying to figure out when, and that's a great idea, Chris, to figure out if we can make it even bigger by having something on the street, maybe the plaza in front or whatever named for him. That would be a great idea. So thank you for that. Well, so we should jump to Denise and see if we have some questions before we finish up. This is a lot of fun. Thank you both. I knew it would be, of course.
I know it's up to you, Kim. Really good to see you.
It's great to see you too.
We have just a couple of questions. Yeah, we have a couple of questions for you guys. Since you're both string players, do you play chamber music together, and and what is that like if you do?
We do play chamber music together, not as often as you might think. But when we do, it's always wonderful, because chamber music, I mean, as much as we love the orchestra, chamber music is the most intimate and personal form of music making. And so when you are able to do that with the person that you are closest with in this world, that is just a special experience.
Chris let me play on his recital that he's played 20 years?
Maybe 15 or 20 years. I play a recital every January at my church. So if anybody wants to come, look up PCPC Arts and it'll pop up.
He let me play that last winter, and it was really special treat. We also had our new violist,
Meredith Kufchat,
who is a giant, amazing violist, and that was a treat, because some of the things that Chris and I live are ordinary worries about children and cars and house and all that sort of thing, and this is it. The word is overused, but it was really special.
That's really cool. Another question that is, you kind of alluded to it together, but you both have very different backgrounds coming to Dallas, and you both have had a long tenure within the orchestra. If people don't know anything about the Dallas Symphony, what would you want them to know about it?
This is the oldest orchestra in America. Dallas Symphony has a tremendous history.
Tremendous history. Glory days under Dorati. I don't know if anybody's heard, but one of the principal cellists of this orchestra was a man named Janos Starker, who is one of the greatest soloists in the history of the cello. He had my chair years and years ago for one season. He went on to other things, but the history of this orchestra is incredible. The future of this orchestra is even more incredible. This is a wonderful institution. We have poured our lives into it without a single regret.
People need to know the legacy and appreciate it and be more educated about it, because I've had a lot of time to read. I study a lot of art history. It was my beloved minor in school. And you don't need to say any more than Rembrandt. And everyone has a whole idea popping into their head of quality, history, inspiration, whatever it is that comes into their mind for the word Rembrandt. But when you say Dallas Symphony Orchestra, very few people are aware of what an amazing institution this is. And I wish that to change. I wish for that to change, and for people in Dallas to appreciate us at least as much as they appreciate their orchestra in Cleveland and in Cincinnati and Boston, because no, it isn't the same in a recording. There are things that happen on stage that are different on a Saturday concert than they were on a Thursday concert. And we know because it is live. It's not everything is rehearsed. Yes, we are well prepared and we're trained and we're all professionals, but there are things that happen that you can only experience in person.
Music is never a repetition. It's always a moment of intense and focused creation at the moment. And to be there and to share that and to experience that is something very different than popping in the CD and hearing the performance come out exactly the same every time. It's a matter of the heart.
Well, I think that's the perfect place to end. Kim, do you have any last words?
I just want to thank Chris and Sasha, and I look forward to seeing you in person, not on a video screen.
Likewise.
Hopefully that will be in the not so distant future. And thank you for everything you're doing. And thank you for keeping your spirits up. And it'll be great when we're all together again.
All right. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It's an
Denise.
honor. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.